Life has a funny way of handing you a script you didn't ask for. Mine felt written in permanent marker the day my younger brother, Mark, was born. I'm Ethan, 35, and I make a decent living as a software engineer here in Texas. It's a life I built myself, piece by piece, through sheer effort. But according to my family, that just means I'm the one who should have extra to give. Especially to Mark. Mark's the golden child. Always has been. 3 years younger than me. Handsome, charming, and utterly convinced the world and our parents owe him a living. Growing up, it was never subtle. My 10th birthday, I got a bike from a department store. Mark's 10th? A custom-built BMX that probably cost more than my dad's car payment. Christmas was a parade of the latest gadgets and trends from Mark, while my gifts were always practical. A new set of encyclopedias, socks, gift certificates to bookstores. Mom and Dad would always say, Ethan is so independent, he doesn't need all that fuss, or Mark needs a little extra help/encouragement. It wasn't just gifts. It was the attention, the praise for the smallest things he did. Mark bringing home AC was met with cheers for trying his best. My straight A's? Well, that's just Ethan being Ethan, isn't it? The real chasm opened up with college. I worked my tail off in high school. AP classes, part-time jobs, academic clubs. I got into a solid local university, planning to commute to save money. It wasn't my dream school, but it was a good program, and I figured I'd avoid student debt. Mark? He barely scraped by, more interested in partying than studying. But he wanted the college experience at a big, expensive state school hours away. And of course, he got it. Full tuition, room, board, books, a brand new car, a generous monthly allowance that probably exceeded my part-time job's earnings for a semester. Paid for entirely by Mom and Dad. When I told my parents I'd be living at home and commuting, Mom nodded, then dropped the bomb. That's fine, Ethan, but if you're staying here, you'll need to contribute. We'll need $700 a month for rent and utilities. $700. As an 18-year-old working for minimum wage at a campus bookstore, that was astronomical. I sputtered, reminding them about Mark's fully funded life away at school. Mom just gave me that tight little smile. Mark needed that support to thrive. You're different. You're capable. You need to learn responsibility. Dad just nodded along. They framed my independence as a reason to burden me, while Mark's dependence was a reason to lavish him with support. So I did it. I worked almost full-time while taking a full course load. Skipped meals, bought the cheapest instant ramen, haunted the library for textbooks, or bought them in terrible condition online. Every single month, that $700 disappeared into my parents' bank account, a constant reminder of the unequal scale. Meanwhile, Mark was complaining about his dorm furniture on phone calls I overheard, getting weekend money wired from Mom whenever he ran a little short. We don't want him to worry, I heard her say once. Why was my worrying irrelevant? Why was my struggle necessary? But his wasn't. After graduation, I finished with honors, by the way, in a tough engineering program. Mark graduated with a vague liberal arts degree and a 2-something GPA. I moved out the very next month. Found a tiny, cheap apartment. Lived like a monk for years, saving every dollar I could. I worked hard, got promotions, built a stable career. Mark, meanwhile, bounced from job to job, married Sarah, a sweet woman who seemed overwhelmed by his demands and the kids, and started having kids. 3 of them, quick succession, twins, now 7, and a boy 5. And the parental bailouts for Mark and his family escalated. New cars when his broke down, or got repossessed, I suspect. Rent payments covered, bills paid, even funding some half-baked business ideas that went nowhere. Mark and Sarah seemed to expect it, and Mom and Dad just kept writing checks, seemingly blind to the fact they were enabling irresponsibility. I kept my distance, visited for holidays, but shared less and less about my own life. They wouldn't care anyway. My successes were met with a cursory nod, quickly followed by an update on Mark's latest challenge, or the kids' milestones. My independence, once a convenient excuse to deny me help, now seemed to be a silent disappointment, as if I wasn't providing the right kind of support, i.e., financial, for Mark. After years of saving and renting a shoebox, I finally hit a point where I could buy a house, a place of my own, a sanctuary. It felt like the culmination of all those years of scraping by, of paying absurd rent to my parents, of watching Mark get everything handed to him. This would be mine. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that I couldn't tell my family. Not until it was done. Telling them would turn it into a circus, immediately shifting the focus from my achievement to how it could benefit Mark and his family. I wanted this one thing, this one huge step, to be purely and selfishly mine. So I started looking quietly. Spent evenings scrolling Zillow, weekends at open houses alone. Didn't breathe a word to Mom, Dad, Mark, or Sarah. The only person who knew was my friend David. David gets it. He's seen the family dynamic from the outside for years and was my quiet sounding board. Keep it on the down low, man, he'd advised. You know how they are. My plan for total secrecy worked for a glorious few weeks. Then disaster struck. I mentioned house hunting casually to a colleague, Linda, who I thought was just friendly but turned out to be a grade A gossip with an uncanny knack for finding connections. Turns out, Linda's cousin is Sarah's best friend. The information highway was disturbingly efficient. The calls and texts started the next day. Mom, overly sweet and probing. Ethan, honey, why didn't you tell us you were looking for a house? That's wonderful. I played dumb. Oh, just casually browse, Mom. Nothing serious. That lasted approximately 30 seconds. Well, Mark and Sarah and I were just talking, and we have so many great ideas. You'll need something big, of course. At least 5 bedrooms. For the kids, you know. And a guest room for us. I was speechless. My house hunt had instantly become a group project centered entirely around their needs. Mom, I don't have kids. I'm looking for a place for me. She brushed it off. Yes, but family's important. You'll need space for Mark's family to visit, for the kids to play, for us to stay over. Mark got on the line, adding his 2 cents about needing a huge yard and maybe a 3-car garage for his projects. Sarah chirped in about wanting a pool. That call was just the beginning. For the next 2 weeks, my phone was a relentless notification machine. Texts, emails, links to houses. Mansions, frankly. 5 bedrooms, 6 bedrooms, finished basements, huge lots, pools, detached garages. Every single message highlighting features specifically for Mark, Sarah, or the kids. Ethan, this one on Maple Street, has a finished basement. Mark could have his own space. Look at the yard on this one. Perfect for the kids to run around. This listing is only 10 minutes from us. We could visit the kids all the time. They weren't even trying to hide that this wasn't about me. It was exhausting, infuriating, and frankly bizarre. I tried, initially, to push back gently. Replied to some, reiterating, that's too big for me, or, I'm looking in a different area. My logic was met with dismissive comments like, don't be silly, Ethan, you need space for family, or, you can afford it if you just manage your money right. The irony was not lost on me. It was like talking to a wall. Finally, I decided to stop engaging. I muted their group chat, ignored their calls and texts about houses. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of arguing. I just kept looking on my own in silence. I spent my evenings online, my weekends driving to quiet suburbs or small towns outside their preferred radius, looking at modest 2-bedroom places, fixer-uppers, anything that felt like a realistic, achievable home for one person. It felt defiant, liberating. Around the same time, I had a long, overdue call with my Aunt Carol. She's Dad's sister, sharp as a tack, and always seemed to see the family dynamic for what it was, even if she didn't always interfere directly. I mentioned, vaguely, the pressure I was getting about house hunting. Aunt Carol sighed. Ah, yes. I had a feeling they'd try something like this. She then dropped a bombshell. Ethan, your parents, they're not doing well financially. Mark's challenges over the years, the bailouts, they've drained their savings. Maybe more than that. They're under a lot of stress. It clicked. This wasn't just about getting Mark a bigger house. It was about offloading a significant financial burden that was crushing them onto me. They weren't just enabling Mark. They were destroying their own future doing it. And now they expected their overlooked son to swoop in and fix the consequences of their golden child favoritism. Aunt Carol didn't excuse their behavior, but her words gave me a cold, hard understanding of their desperation. She advised me to be careful, to protect myself because they wouldn't stop pushing. Armed with this knowledge, I continued my silent search with renewed determination. I needed my own space, my own stability, more than ever. I found it about a week later. A small two-bedroom cottage in a quiet town about 40 minutes away from my parents and Mark. It wasn't fancy, needed some cosmetic work, had a small yard, just enough for a grill and maybe a garden. But it felt solid, peaceful. The second I walked in, I knew. This was it. My home. I put in an offer the next day. The negotiation was tense, but it was accepted. The closing process was a blur of paperwork, kept completely secret from my family. The day I got the keys, standing alone in the empty living room, I felt an overwhelming wave of relief, pride, and defiance. I had done it, entirely on my own terms. For the next few weeks, I let them keep sending listings. Ignored the calls. Let them build their fantasy of the mansion I was supposedly buying for the family. I knew a mandatory family dinner was coming up. Mom had mentioned it weeks ago, insisted everyone be there. I knew it was the planned ambush, where they'd corner me and demand I commit to one of their chosen properties. David advised me to just not go, but I decided I would. I wouldn't hide. I would go with my keys in my pocket and drop my own bomb. I went over my script in my head. I knew what I would say, and I knew exactly what their reaction would be. Saturday evening, I arrived at my parents' house right on time. Stepped into the usual chaos. Kids yelling, Mark lounging on the couch watching TV, Sarah looking tired, Mom bustling in the kitchen, Dad hovering. Mom gave me a perfunctory greeting, already distracted. Dinner was a tense affair. Forced small talk punctuated by the kids' noise and Mark and Sarah complaining loudly about how cramped their apartment was, how the kids needed space, how hard it was. They were laying the groundwork, softening me up. After dinner, as the kids were finally distracted with a movie and dessert was served, Mom cleared her throat. Showtime. She put on her brightest, fakest smile. Ethan, she announced to the table, her voice dripping with anticipation. We are so excited. We think we found the perfect house for you. Mark and Sarah immediately chimed in, eyes shining with what looked suspiciously like greedy excitement. It's amazing, Ethan. 5 bedrooms. Huge yard. Perfect neighborhood. Mark added, yeah, and the garage is massive. I could finally get that classic car project going. Mom pulled out some glossy printouts. Look, see? There's a perfect playroom area downstairs and a lovely guest room for us. It's only 15 minutes from Mark and Sarah's place, so the kids will be close. We could go see it next weekend. The agent is ready. They were beaming, clearly expecting me to be thrilled, grateful even. They had planned this out, built their narrative, ignored my silence, and were now presenting me with my assigned house. I took a slow breath, placed my fork down carefully. Everyone was looking at me. The kids were quiet for once, sensing the shift in the air. Actually, I said, my voice calm and clear, cutting through their hopeful chatter. There's something I need to tell you all. Their smiles faltered slightly, replaced by curiosity. I've already bought a house. The room went dead silent. The air felt thick. Their faces went blank for a second, processing. Then confusion, disbelief, and finally, anger began to dawn. Mom's voice was sharp, disbelieving. What? What do you mean you already bought a house? Just what I said, Mom. I bought a house. I met her gaze steadily. I closed on it 2 weeks ago. Mark sputtered. But you were just looking. You didn't tell us. I know, I said. It was a quiet process. Sarah leaned forward, jaw tight. Well, what kind of house? Is it the one on Oak Street? The big one with the pool? No, I said. It's not. I paused, letting the anticipation build. It's a small 2-bedroom cottage, about 40 minutes away. It's exactly what I was looking for. And it's mine. For a second, just a flicker, I saw shock, maybe even a hint of confusion before the anger exploded. Cottage, Mark exclaimed, his voice high-pitched with disbelief and outrage. How are we supposed to fit in a cottage? That was it. That single question, screamed across the dinner table, perfectly summed up their entire view of the situation. My house wasn't mine. It was a resource that they were entitled to, a place they needed to fit into. You won't, I said, my voice steel-hard now. Because it's my house. I bought it for me. Not for you, not for the kids, not for Mom and Dad. For me. Mom found her voice, a low growl building into a shout. Ethan, how could you? We've been working so hard, finding the perfect place for you for the family. To make such a big decision without consulting us. You weren't finding a place for me. I countered, my own voice rising, years of suppressed frustration finally surfacing. You were finding a place for Mark and his family. You ignored everything I said I wanted. You just kept sending listings for mansions you decided Mark needed. But we need this, Ethan. Sarah wailed, tears springing to her eyes. Our apartment is tiny. The kids are cramped. We don't know what we're going to do. Plot twist 2 lands here, woven into the panic. Mark, panicking, added frantically, "Yeah, Ethan, our lease is up next month, and the landlord is selling. We don't have anywhere to go. We were counting on this." The truth was out. Their desperation wasn't just about wanting more space. It was about an immediate, looming housing crisis they hadn't planned for, and they had simply decided I was the solution, using my house hunt as the vehicle. And that, I said, my voice dropping back to a dangerous calm, is not my problem. Dad slammed his hand on the table. That's a horrible thing to say, Ethan. They're your family, your brother. You're being selfish. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with me? I stood up, chair scraping against the floor. What's wrong with me is I've spent my entire life watching you give Mark everything while demanding I be grateful for scraps. What's wrong with me is I finally stood up for myself, worked my butt off, and bought my own home. And your first reaction is to scream about how you can't fit in it and how it won't solve Mark's problem. Chaos erupted. Sarah was openly sobbing. Mom was yelling about how I was ungrateful, how she raised me better. Dad was red-faced, ranting about family loyalty and disappointment. Mark just sat there, stunned and looking petulant. I grabbed my keys from the counter. "I'm leaving," I said. Mom rushed towards me. "You can't just walk away, Ethan. We're family." I turned at the door, looked back at the scene of their self-inflicted crisis and misplaced fury. "Watch me," I said. I walked out, got in my car, and drove away. My hand was shaking on the wheel, a mix of residual adrenaline, anger, and a strange, powerful sense of liberation. I had done it. The fallout would be immense, but I had finally, truly drawn a line. The barrage started before I even got home. Texts, calls, voicemails. Angry, pleading, guilt-tripping messages from Mom, Dad, Mark, Sarah. Accusations of heartlessness. Screaming about how I was ruining the kids' lives. Desperate pleas to reconsider, to sell my tiny cottage and buy something suitable for the family. I muted the group chats. Let the calls go to voicemail. Listening to the voicemails was hard. Hearing the raw anger, the feigned tears, the sheer entitlement twisted into victimhood. Dad's voicemail was just him yelling about betrayal. Then the wider family started getting involved. Calls from aunts and uncles, clearly prompted by my parents, echoing the same lines. "Ethan, family comes first. Can't you help your brother out? He's in a tough spot." I handled them calmly but firmly, explaining, briefly, that I had bought my home for my needs, and Mark's housing situation was separate. Most didn't understand or accept it. Plot twist 3 arrives in the fallout. Aunt Carol called again a few days later. She had talked to Mom. The situation was worse than I thought. "Ethan," she said, her voice tired. "Your parents, they're not just stressed. They're in deep trouble. All those times helping Mark, they've mortgaged their house, burned through their retirement. They were absolutely banking on you buying a big place so Mark's family could live with you, or maybe even planning for you to somehow take over their house so they could downsize and give Mark their current one. I don't know the exact plan, but they were desperate. They don't have the money to keep bailing him out, and they're facing their own financial cliff." It was a grim confirmation. Their years of blindly enabling Mark hadn't just hurt me. They had destroyed their own financial security. And their solution was to demand the son they'd neglected fix the mess created by the son they'd favored. It was tragic, messed up, and confirmed that my standing firm wasn't just about a house. It was about breaking a toxic cycle. Moving into my cottage was surreal. It was small, needed a fresh coat of paint and some repairs, but it was quiet, peaceful. Every box unpacked, Every nail hammered felt like a victory. This space was mine. No conditions, no hidden expectations, no demands to make room for anyone else's life. The family is silent now. Blocking their numbers was necessary for my peace of mind. I know they're dealing with their own fallout. Mark's housing, the parents' financial woes. I don't know the details, and honestly, I can't get involved. I feel a deep sadness for the loss of the family I wished I had, the one where love wasn't conditional on what I could provide for the golden child. But I also feel a profound sense of peace and self-preservation. My house is quiet. The phone is silent. It cost me my immediate family, perhaps permanently, but I finally have something that is truly, unconditionally mine. A foundation built by my own hands for my own life. And for now, that has to be enough. The future of those relationships is uncertain, an open question hanging in the silence. But here in my small, quiet cottage, I am finally truly home.